because it's on Mexican time, but we'll go ahead and get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kim Temple and I'm with Runaway Realty here in Puerto Morelos, Mexico. And tonight I'm joined by Keith Smith, who is another agent in our office. And I think Laura will be hopping on. Laura is our assistant, who many of you have probably met if you've been in our office. And anyway, we're hosting this Runaway Wednesday series of Zoom meetings to kind of provide education education basically to people who are interested in perhaps making a move to Mexico, specifically Puerto Morelos, and who just need some more information about that. It's hard to find, there's Laura, let me let her in. It's hard to find consistent information that's legitimate online, and just asking around at the bars and restaurants is not a great way to do this. So we thought, let's have some Zoom meetings and help people get information that they can rely on to make a decision about whether a purchase here is right for them or whether Puerto Morelos is right for them. So, so far we've had so much fun with it. We used to do these in meetings in person, and then with COVID, everything went online, and we've actually really learned to like that better. Although we love meeting people in person, this format allows us to really go deeper into these topics, have a little more time with you. We don't just have to catch you when you're on vacation. So it's been fun. We hope that you enjoy it. Couple housekeeping things. We are recording. I did turn on record. We are recording this meeting, and we're going to post it on our YouTube channel. So if you prefer not to be on the video, you can turn off your camera, and keep an eye on our Facebook page and our YouTube page for the video after the meeting. Here's Laura. Laura has joined us. Laura Perez. She's on mute.
Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late.
That's okay.
I'm here.
She's got a little one to manage, to wrangle. And we do have a chat box, which I've already dropped the link to our Puerto Morelos buyer brainstorming guide. You'll find it along the bottom if you click on that. So if you have any questions, drop it in there. Or there's not too many of us, so I think we could manage turning on, just unmute your microphone and we can ask questions as we go along. When the group gets much bigger, some weeks we have many people and it's harder to do that. But yeah, feel free to drop a note in the chat or just interrupt me. Let some more people in. All right. I think that is my housekeeping for right now. Get my glasses on. Thank you so much for joining us, guys, from the cold north. I think there's most people are in north. Mark's here in Puerto Morelos. Laura's here. I don't know where everyone else is, but I imagine it's maybe not as nice temperature as it is here right now. We are going to just dive right in. In our last Zoom meeting, which I think I see a few faces here that were here for the last Zoom meeting, we covered all of immigration. The one before that, we talked about the ways that foreigners own property in Mexico. So if you didn't join us for that and need that information, drop something in the chat and we can send that to you. But tonight we're going to start by talking about basically what to think about before you start looking for property in Puerto Morelos. When we film Mexico Live or House Hunters International, the episode always starts out with like the couple meeting with the agent over a cocktail and telling them their wish list and their price range. And then boom, you go out and look at properties that day. You see 3 amazing homes, you pick one, and then everyone's happy. In real life, as you can imagine, it's much different than that. And what we try to do with buyers to get the best, to make sure that they choose the best property for themselves is to do a bunch of work before you get here, or for sure before we go look at homes. And what we want you to do is to, educate yourself on the process, educate yourself on the costs, really think about how you're going to live here, because you're investing a big chunk of your hard-earned money in an all cash market. So it's worth it to spend some time beforehand to see really what kind of property is going to work for you. Let me let Bill in real quick. And what neighborhood and whatnot. So we're going to kind of go over the process that we go through and what we hope you go through before you just decide you want to go out and look at properties, fall in love, and maybe get something that you wish that you hadn't gotten. I guess just in general, when people, come into our office or contact us, everyone wants to be on the beach. We all start out wanting to be on the beach. I want to be on the beach. It's a dream for most of us. But the reality is that on the beach is, obviously very expensive and a maintenance nightmare. It's very expensive to buy. It's very expensive to maintain. And most of the beach properties, at least in Puerto Morelos, are giant. They were built to be rentals, so they're usually 5 and 6 bedrooms. They're very large properties. So realistically, in Puerto Morelos, at least, the beach may not be where you want to be. And if you're willing to expand your horizons and to consider some other areas, you may find that there's a much better fit for you somewhere else. So that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight. I guess the first thing that we would want you to do when you're thinking about buying is educate yourself about the buying process, which you're doing right now. We have a lot of information on that, but the main thing that we want you to know is that all sales are cash here. This is a market where you cannot get a mortgage or financing to purchase a home. So when I say all cash, I'm not meaning that you're carrying suitcases of cash down to Mexico to buy. We do it all with wire transfers and escrow accounts, but it is cash. So that's something to keep in mind, at the very beginning of your thought process of buying here. The other thing to keep in mind is that in transactions here, the buyer pays a big chunk of closing costs. The closing costs include the cost of a notario, purchase acquisition taxes, legal costs, registration costs, the cost to set up or set up a new fideicomiso or transfer an existing one. And those costs can be quite steep at like the $300,000 range. They're about 8 to 9% of the purchase price. As you go down, the percentage goes up. So at the $100,000 range, they're closer to 10 to 11% of the purchase price. Excuse me, and below that, they're higher. At the $1 million range, they're close to 5%. So whatever range you land on, it's important to factor in the closing costs so that we know that we're looking at the right houses. So it is worth it to spend some time up front understanding really what your, what budget you're working with, because that will steer you a little bit in what areas you want to look at in Puerto Morelos. Real quick, does anyone have any questions about that part? No? Are you guys going to be quiet tonight?
Okay, sure. I'm happy to ask a question. So
good. Thank you, Julie.
Just to clarify, so you're saying the buyer pays, if we were talking about $100,000 home, 10 to 11% of the purchase price the buyer is expected to pay in closing costs.
Yes.
Okay. That's helpful to know. And I guess one of my questions is going to be, and maybe you'll cover this, is because if we're coming from another country, obviously America, like property tax and like other costs. I don't know if you'll cover that at some point, but I'd like to hear that.
Okay, that's next.
Thank
you. In terms of, you need to, you need to keep in mind what you want to spend on a property, but in conjunction with that, you need to consider your cost of living here. So buying a property is expensive. Cost of ownership are less expensive, and that's the good news. So for example, annual property taxes are quite low. A ballpark to ballpark what they would be, you would take 0.0028 times the purchase price. So for a $300,000 property, it's about like $800 per year. Of course, you're going to pay that in pesos. And if you pay in December, you get 15% off that. So for many of you, I see some happy faces out there. These annual property taxes are much lower than you're paying at home. So it becomes kind of a non-issue in here. They're quite low. your, home insurance is very inexpensive because this is a litigious country. You don't have much liability. So the insurers are not charging so much. You can get hurricane insurance, you can get liability, the car insurance is much less. Medical insurance is much less, at least than we pay in the US, not Canada, if you have free health insurance, lucky ducks. But the cost of food can be quite a bit less. You need to decide how much you're going to go out to restaurants. Are you going on the port side or in the colonia? That can make a difference. You will set your food and entertainment budget, but in general, the costs of living are much less than I experienced in the US. I have a good example, and then we'll move on, but this was about 4 years ago, but well, maybe 5, because my hair was still brown. So one morning I was getting my hair cut and colored, and my car was being detailed. There was a cleaning lady at my house and a gardener. And all of that morning cost me under $100 US. So just to like my hair would have been $200 in Fort Collins, Colorado. I couldn't afford to have a cleaning lady because that would be another $150 to $200. I couldn't, my car detail would have been $100. It was like $40, I don't know, like $10. So it's just that kind of stuff is so much cheaper. So you can, afford to have maybe some comforts that I didn't have a cleaning lady back in Colorado. So it's kind of nice. And I think other people would say the same in terms of cost of living. Insurance is not free. Health insurance can, if you get a good policy, and it depends on your age, that can really start costing a lot. But just everyday walk-in medical care is most people are paying it out of pocket. It's very inexpensive. Costs of prescriptions are inexpensive. So it's important to take a look at that. And Keith, chime in anytime here, what you found with costs of living. I hope I'm telling the truth, or I know everyone has a different experience. So I love to hear other people's experiences.
I think everything here is less expensive with a couple of exceptions. What I usually talk to my clients about is that the two things that I find to be just as expensive here as they are in the United States is gas for your car and electricity. And I think the electricity is one that really catches people up sometimes because they move into a home here that uses mini splits instead of central air, but they want to try to run their mini splits to make their house feel like it has central air conditioning, and they can really run up that power bill, and that can be a surprise. So that's one thing to be aware of if you're living here. But like Kim said, I mean, things are so much cheaper. We pay about $350 a year for our homeowners insurance, and that includes hurricane coverage. And then for each of our vehicles, our auto insurance is about $350 for the year also. Health insurance is something that we are still examining and trying to make some decisions about. Health insurance here, good private insurance, is much cheaper than we were paying in the United States. But there is an age that you reach here where your premiums on your private health insurance get higher. So that's something to be aware of also. But I think it's just a matter of balancing out your expenses, and you're saving a lot on a lot of things, and then you might pay a little bit more or the same for some other things. But we're balancing it out and making it work.
Okay. So just in general, when you're thinking about how much you want to spend on a house, you also need to think, what are your, if you're moving here full time or whatever, what are your living expenses? Maybe you want to spend less on the house so you have more of your retirement money left over for other things. But it's worth considering before you start looking at properties. Kind of, the things that we want to encourage you to think about as well are, are you planning to be here a couple weeks a year, or are you moving full time, or will you be here over high season? How are you going to use the property? Are you bringing a pet? Many condo complexes don't allow pets, and so that's something to consider up front. That's going to steer your buying decision as well. Will you have a car? Do you need outdoor space? How important is privacy to you? How, are you interested in a gated community with more, more security and security patrols, or are you more interested in living outside of a gated community? Can you live without a dishwasher, which most people have to anyway, but and some properties don't have their own laundry facilities. People send their laundry out here quite a bit. So those are things to just, be aware of, the differences in properties here, and the different amenities that are available in properties here, and to kind of prepare yourself for upfront and to really think about it. What can I really live with? Can I really walk everywhere, or am I going to need to get a car? And if I get a car, then does that open up many other areas that I wasn't going to consider before because I only wanted to be walking distance everywhere? Puerto Morelos is very walkable, but if you live here full time, there are times you're going to need a car. Maybe you just rent a car by the day. A lot of people do that, or they share a car. Couples buy cars together and then they just kind of timeshare their car. But anyway, it's good to think about it up front before you start looking at homes, because it's pretty easy to, you find one, you fall in love with it, and then realize, oh, this means I need a car, or is this really enough room for me and my partner to live in full time? It was probably okay for 2 weeks, but can I really live in 600 square feet for 6 months? So all of those things are important things to flesh out and to think about before you start looking. The one, a lot of people, when they start looking, say like, I could never live in a condo, I only want to consider houses. Or I only want a condo because I don't want to deal with the hassle of owning a house. And that's, here, I would invite you to consider both types of properties if they are available in your price range, because many, and also privacy is an issue. Some people think they can't live in a condo because they don't think they'll have privacy. There are condo complexes that offer, very private indoor outdoor spaces. You might be surprised at how large they are and what kind of outdoor space you can get there. And houses here don't necessarily have yards. Many of them don't have yards, or they have very small yards. So it's not like you're going to get a bunch more outdoor space in every home. I'm just saying, don't rule one out over the other, I don't think, unless you're just positive that you can't live in one type of property. Whatever, although you'd pay condo fees in a condo complex, you're also going to pay to maintain a property. So either way, you're going to be paying someone to maintain your property. So it's kind of a wash in that sense. On one hand, you're going to do it, or you're going to hire a property manager to do it. On the other hand, the condo association takes care of all of it for you. So, so those, I would just invite you to be open to looking at both kinds of properties if they're available in your price range. Any questions about that? And then the pet issue with condos, many condo complexes don't allow pets. So if you're coming with your pet, you're probably needing to look at a single family home.
Kim, can you talk a little bit about the difference between storage in Canada and the United States in homes versus the lack of storage? When Keith was great when he was taking us around, and luckily for us pointed out that there really wasn't any storage, and so was showing us that the bedrooms that other people would have guests in, we would probably be storing our food and our kayaks in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most Mexican builders do not include much storage when they're building property here. And I think that Mexicans are just better than, they're not pack rats like we are. And I think they're kind of flabbergasted with how much space we dedicate to holding stuff that we're not using. So yeah, it's very unusual to find ample storage in a home. Oftentimes you're adding a bodega or something outside if you have space. Building closets, when you buy, especially new construction here, most likely won't have closets built in. Yeah, there's not a lot of storage in many of these homes. Anyone else want to talk about the storage situation?
Yeah,
Kim?
this
I'm
is
sorry, go
Julie.
ahead.
I'm sorry, I brought this up with Keith. Same comment about that was a different surprise, I guess, about not having the closet space, right? Because it's just not what we're used to. So that's one thing is that's like very different. But then also the other thing was the laundry and having a washer dryer or space for a washer dryer, which is so normal, I'll call it, in the US. And Keith was very kind to share with us that there's laundry services that are very reasonable and like it's just a different way of thinking about it, but it was not something that was on my mind. I was like, what do you mean I have to have a washer and dryer? So I think those two things are important to point out to people from at least from America, that that's just not part of the natural setup.
Julie, I'll say this too, and I don't think I mentioned this earlier today when I was talking to you. The property that we were looking at had the little freestanding closet sort of set up.
Yeah.
And interestingly, here in Mexico, or this area of Mexico, even if you had a built-in closet in that area, often here you will still see them with no doors on the
And
front.
that's what I mean. Like, what's the common look?
It's a humidity issue
Oh,
here.
yeah.
So
Right.
if you have doors on the front of your closet, you want to make sure that it's some sort of open mesh where you can get some airflow in there.
Okay.
And then, like I said, a lot of people just forego doors whatsoever. So it is a little different from us coming from the US, and you walk in and you just see a bunch of clothes hanging there. But there's a functionality to it.
For sure. No, that makes a big difference. It was just so different. So
Different,
I think that's important to understand. And also how do we navigate that when we're used to having a certain thing like a closet or doors or whatever? And because it's also kind of a look thing, it like it's a certain look versus just the functionality that you're speaking of with the humidity.
Yeah, I think you can either do doors with some sort of, open mesh to let your air in your closet.
Right.
Or I'm a big curtain person. Like I've got curtains all over my windows. I've got curtains to separate rooms. And on one of our closets, I just have a curtain that I pull across the front. So it sort of hides everything away, but still keeps everything dry.
Those needs. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what we do. I mean, my house has 0 closets. I built one in and it has curtains on the front of it, which is not something I ever dreamed that I would make me happy, but it's fine, and I don't want to have mold. I don't want things to fall apart, which they often do here if you're not being really careful with that.
Okay.
So it's just a different way to live. And it's also why they don't have kitchen cabinets, right? Most traditional Mexican homes here have open shelving. If they do have cabinets, they're slatted. There's, a lot of air goes in and out, but it's very much a new development to have any kind of kitchen cabinets that hide your stuff. So that's interesting to see people's reaction to that too. Now I think I've been here long enough, it doesn't shock me, but I remember at the beginning, like, oh my God, nobody has cabinets, including me. I just got cabinets this year, 10 years after living full time here. And I do love them, I have to say that. But we run our AC a lot too, so I don't feel as worried about having cabinets shut. It's because we're running AC. What else? So most places don't have dishwashers. It's very unusual to have a dishwasher because our water is so hard. Dishwashers are very expensive here compared to what you would pay in other places. And if you don't have a softener or you're not running them all the time, they tend to get gummed up and have to be replaced or repaired all the time. So most people have decided it's just not worth it unless you went ahead and put in a water softener system. What else? The washing machine oftentimes is outside. Washers, dryers are oftentimes outside on the patio, so they don't heat up the house. Many places don't have dryers. People are just air drying their clothes, which is so counterintuitive to me. When I moved here from Colorado, I'm like, what do you mean hang out your clothes to dry in this humidity? But if they dry really fast. And it uses less electricity and it's better for your clothes. So if you have space to do it, most people are doing that. But yeah, it's, I think I probably should have started by saying this. When you go look for properties, you need to remember that it's a different country, a different climate, and you're starting a new adventure. Things are not going to look the same. You're not going to find the same kind of homes that you would find back home. And that's part of the fun, right? You're leaving home for a reason. It's going to look different and it's going to feel different, but that can be a fun challenge. Or some days you're frustrated also. So in terms of, those are the kind of the big things to think about before you start looking at properties. Price is definitely going to steer you, to what areas you can afford. So I would just want to kind of do an overview of the different neighborhoods and price ranges here, so you can have an idea. In the Seaside Village, which is this little like 3-block deep by 10-block long village that many, people think is Puerto Morelos. Well, it is Puerto Morelos, but Puerto Morelos is much bigger. This little area is the high dollar area. This is empty lots here now are $350,000. There's very few single family homes on the market, and the ones that are $700,000 and up. Anything on the beach is over $1 million. So it's, condos right now, there's some pre-construction condos around 200,000, but the already constructed inventory is gone, but was, I think 260 was about the lowest that it was. And if we get them back on the market, I think they'll probably be closer to 300,000. So this area has become very expensive, partially because it's geographically limited. We have the mangrove on one side and the ocean on the other. So much like a ski town in Colorado, you can't grow. And so the property just sits here and gets more expensive. It's a nice place to live. You can easily walk anywhere. You can charge a higher rent in this neighborhood than, anywhere else in the Puerto Morelos municipality. So those are all things to keep in mind. But it is, it's a little village, and there's a lot of restaurants and live music, and the truck, the gas truck, the fruit truck, the knife sharpener guy. It's a loud neighborhood, like dogs barking, chickens. Like this isn't a quiet neighborhood, this 3-block by 10-block area by any means. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If sound really bothers you, you probably don't want to be in the Seaside Village area of Puerto Morelos. But keep in mind that Puerto Morelos is actually much larger than this village. It goes all the way into another little town called Leona Vicario in the jungle. So to the west, it goes like a 30-minute drive. To the north, there's another 15 minutes on the highway past Bahia Petampiche. That's all Puerto Morelos. To the south, to Playa Secreto is all Puerto Morelos. So Puerto Morelos is actually, the municipality is quite large. It's not just this little seaside village. And lucky for us, they've built a lot of neighborhoods that are much more affordable if you're willing to go a little bit further from the beach. So the closest neighborhoods to the seaside village are these gated communities along the highway, adjacent to the highway. Punta Reina is the closest one to the village. Punta Vista is just north, Regatta, and then there's 3 Aldea communities already built, and they're working on another one. So those communities are pretty amazing because for a fraction of the price, well, for example, condos in the Seaside Village are $300,000. For $200,000, you can get a single family home, 3-bedroom, 3-bath with a pool in one of these gated communities. So it's much more affordable, and you're still a 5-minute drive from the Caribbean. So that's not bad.
Can I ask a question? Sorry
Uh-huh.
to butt. Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Sure.
Hi, it says Mike's iPad, but my name is Julie also.
Oh, hi, Julie.
Hi. So we've been looking to purchase, we have a condo in Puerto Venturas, but we're looking at getting like a retirement place in
Uh-huh.
Puerto Morelos. When you say the gated communities are still close to the beach, I know I was invited to this because I had asked in a Facebook group, okay, is a car mandatory? Say if I'm looking at a place in Aldea or Punta Vista or one of those places, and we're only going to be there, I'm still working, so say 2-3 months a year, do you need to have the car? How long of a drive is it? You know, where, yeah, is golf cart a thing there, or what is the best means of transportation? How far? So understanding you're paying probably less than half price, but what are you giving up when it comes to transportation wise?
Right. So yeah, Punta Rena is the closest gated community to the village, and it's walkable. You can walk into town from there. You can ride a bike into, to the beach very easily. My husband just walked. It was 18 minutes. The bike ride's about 10. The drive is 5 to the beach. And then the rest of them they're close, and they probably actual Punta Vista and Regatta probably are walkable. The problem is the entrance is off the highway. So you're not going to be doing that. You're not going to ride a bike there.
So golf
You're gonna-
carts?
yeah, your golf cart can't go on the highway. So golf carts are great and people are getting them, but you can't drive it on the highway. So I would say if you're going to spend a significant amount of time in those communities, you either need a long-term car rental or you probably need to have a car. But I mean, I wish my friend Donna was on. She usually is, but she's having trouble jumping on tonight. So I'll just throw out the Donna story. And so many of you have heard it. And so I apologize, but it's my best story. So Donna and Gary were looking, they wanted to be in Puerto Morelos. They only wanted to look in the port. They would not look anywhere else. We found a condo in their price range. They were not at all, we're sitting writing an offer and they're not at all excited about it, which is not how you want to feel when you're a real estate agent. And I said, please, I know you don't want to look in a gated community, but come look at, I have one house out there that's almost done. I just want you to see it, what you could get. So you know how the story ends because they fell in love with the house and they finished it the way they wanted it. Was a 2-story, 3-bedroom, 3-bath house with a pool with a really nice, lovely, pretty big yard. For those gated communities, it was on a larger lot. And it was $100,000 less than the condo that they were going to buy half a block off the beach, that her husband they would have gotten divorced. Like he would never wanted to be in a condo. He wouldn't have been happy in a condo. He loves to putter. So, and $100,000 is a lot of money. I mean, when you're doing a mortgage, maybe it's only a little more money per month, but this is cash. You're parking that cash in a home. So with their $100,000, they got over their sadness of not walking. They bought a little car and they're in town as much as they want. And then they go to their peaceful, quiet neighborhood and they're super happy. So since then, they sold that house because they didn't want to climb stairs anymore, bought a lot in another gated community, built a house there, and are thrilled and are in town as much as they want to be, which is way less than they, imagined 8 years ago when they first bought. When you first get here, if you're moving full time, I think you think, I need to be in the thick of things and, I need to be involved in all these social activities all the time. Well, it's real life. Like we all have other, we're not necessarily always needing to be involved in all that. And they have a social life. They also have people that live in their community. They're in town a lot. She's involved in the school. So I just have seen it in action that being a little bit far from the beach is not a life killer. You're going to survive and you're probably going to be happy you have a car because a lot of the things that we need are in Cancun or Playa del Carmen. Puerto Morelos still doesn't have all that much stuff. So if we're shopping, and I'm just talking about shopping, we have supermarkets, but like Costco and Sam's and Walmart, all that, none of that stuff's here. Furniture shops, all somewhere else. So you're going to want a car. And they don't cost that much here. You can store it, park it when you're not here. So I just would not get so hung up on the car thing. I would get hung up on how you want to live. If that answers your question. And I ask anyone else to pipe in. I know Laura lives here. Laura has a car, but did she go away?
Oh, no, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
You
No, I
live
agree.
on my grid.
Yes, here I am. The other thing to remember is, Puerto is amazing. We get a lot of visitors. In high season, we get a lot of visitors. So it gets really, really busy in town. And, after I leave the office, I live in a gated community that's about 15 minutes from the office. from the port side. And when I get home, the last thing I want to do is go back to the ocean. I mean, I love the ocean, don't get me wrong, but it gets so busy in the high season. So it's really nice to kind of have my little quiet community where I can be and relax. Not so much traffic, it's not so loud. I find myself going a lot more in the low season when the streets are, when I can find a parking spot. So those are things to think about too. It's nice to have that peace and quiet when you want it.
Yeah. Keith, anything?
You want me to talk about the colonia, Kim? Is it my turn?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Okay. I'll go over the colonia real quick. And those of you who know me know I'm a little bit of a rambler. In the interest of time, I'm just going to try to not be a rambler right now. So yeah, when we first came to check out Puerto Morelos about 3 years ago, we stayed on the port side and liked the port side. And then we came over to the colonia one day, and it was not what I expected. The colonia was larger than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just like a little, couple little intersections, but it's a fairly large area. And it was not what I expected. And I don't know that I necessarily saw myself living in the colonia. I think I was one of those people that really thought they had to be walking distance to the beach. But that was not in our budget. So we wound up living in the colonia, and I love it. And I could talk all night about it. Like I said, I'm not going to. It's a different vibe than the port side. I think sometimes people want to look at properties in the colonia just from a strictly financial aspect, because they are so much cheaper than they are on the port side, but they want the colonia to be just like the port side. And it's different. It has a little different feel. The port side is more geared toward tourists. You have, a little higher end shopping. You have the gold and jewelry and this sort of stuff. And then on the colonia, we're a little more practical. We have the place to get your oil changed and the place to buy new tires on our side of the town. The colonia is very laid back. It has a very chill vibe. It has a very community-oriented feel to it. And the port side does too. I'm not saying that, that's unique to the colonia, but it's very community-oriented. It's a little bit more of an authentic feel to me to live on this side of town, because it doesn't have so many things that are geared toward tourism like the port side does. So it's just a really interesting place to live. And I now spend 97% of my time in the colonia. I work out of my house, so I don't go to the office every day. I go to the office once in a while to meet clients, or just to say hello to Kim and Gabrielle and Laura, or to have a quick meeting. But most days I'm here. We don't even go to the beach that often. We have a pool at our house, so we go to the beach once in a while, but I'm super content just to use our pool here and spend our time here. There's tons of restaurants to go to on this side of town. I mean, I've never seen a small town like Puerto Morelos that had so many restaurants in it. And to go out to eat in the colonia, half or less the price that you will pay to go out to eat on the port side. It's so much more economical to eat on this side of town. And like I said, more restaurants than, you started with one and you went through all of them. By the time you got to the end of the list, you would have forgotten what the first one was like and could start all over again. And I think a question that comes up a lot for people that aren't as familiar with the colonia is safety. I think sometimes people perceive the port side as being a safer area than the colonia. And I think that's just because the colonia is a little bit of an unknown to some folks. I find the colonia to be perfectly safe. Like I said, it's very community oriented. It's very family oriented. In the evenings, you go out and you will see at the park, there's some basketball courts, or there's a couple of other sports areas in the colonia. People are playing basketball. The kids are at soccer practice. People are out walking. They're riding their bikes. They're going to get a bite to eat. They're going to the store. Everyone is just out and about. And that's going to go until 10 or even 11 o'clock, maybe on the weekends at night. And then people are going to start to go home. So no, I wouldn't necessarily be out wandering around at 1 o'clock in the morning. If I had to, for some reason, I'd just be aware of my surroundings, but That's no different than living in the United States. I wouldn't really be out walking around at 1 a.m. where we lived in the United States either. So yes, I think it's super safe and safe whether you live in a gated community or non-gated. We live in a non-gated community. For gated communities in Colonia, there's 7 options. There's 7 different gated communities, and price-wise, you can go anywhere from a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. That's about 700 square feet. That's going to be a single-story attached home for about $80,000 gated, up to a 4-bedroom, 3-bath townhome that's could go as high as about 150,000 US. So that's sort of your price range for gated communities in the Colonia. And then for non-gated communities, there are mainly 3. There's Villas Uno, Villas La Playa, and Villas Dos. Villas Uno was built first about 15 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And we live in Villas Dos, which I think was built about 7 years ago. And then Villas La Playa is somewhere in between there. And in the non-gated communities, it's a real mixed bag. You go anywhere from a real fixer-upper that you might be able to get for around $50,000 US right now, all the way up to some very nicely done homes that may be 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or even more, that could be more than $200,000 US. So there's a really wide variety of housing choices on this side of town and price points as well.
There's also, so this is funny that you said that about 1 a.m. Fun fact, the Colonia is alive in the middle of the night because all those people, a lot of people work in the resorts and they get off and they come back on the bus and then they all go out to dinner. My husband used to work in these restaurants and we had a group of people over at the house that all worked at the restaurants and they like, we want tacos at 1 a.m. And I said, you're crazy. Nothing's going to be open. It's Puerto Morelos. So we go to the Colonia. It's now where La Cabana is. There was a little taco shop there. It was like the middle of the day. Like the street was busy. Every restaurant was full. People out with their kids. I was just like, I can't believe all this happens while I'm sleeping every night. Like there's a whole world that happens late at night because that's when the families can be together. You know, they work all day and the family gets off late at night and they take the kids out. So it's really interesting. So I would not be really, given that, I guess that was a certain commercial area, but I think it's pretty safe over there kind of all the time. There's not a lot of people ask about security and you know, whether they should be in a gated community or non-gated community. There's not a lot of, what do I want to say? Like personal crime. Like there's certainly property. I mean, people will break into a home if there's a way in, you know, in many cases, they'll break in, they'll take whatever they can take in a backpack. And so it is important to make sure your house is secured and your car is secured, but they're not like attacking people. They're not, they'll squirt ketchup on you and try to, you know, in the supermarket, people are doing this scam where they squirt ketchup on you and act like they're getting it off. Then they're really taking your wallet out of your purse. I mean, that happens around the world, but they're not like holding you at gunpoint, you know, just randomly beating you up. So in that sense, I really feel like this community is super safe. I'm way less worried about crazy people in this community than I am when I go back to the US. But there is a certain, you know, in the gated community, there's another level of security because there's a security tour that's going around while you're sleeping at night and there's gates around the community. And your house is probably very secure. So it's interesting, but I don't live in a gated community and we've been fine. In fact, sometimes we forget to lock the doors at all and we're like, oh my God, we slept with the security door wide open. We've never had any trouble. So I guess that's good to know. Laura, you're in a gated community. How do you feel?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I can attest to what Kim's saying. I mean, I've lived here for, well, this year it'll be 11 years. And I moved here when I was 22 and I would walk home, you know, after work late at night. I never have felt threatened. Nothing's ever happened to me. You know, I've never been, you know, robbed or mugged or anything like that. Yeah, I've never had a situation where I felt uncomfortable, even out at night. So I definitely think that, you know, it's like Kim was saying, it's not a lot of personal attacks or things like that that are happening. But yeah, I mean, break-ins do happen. You know, it's one thing that's kind of shocking for people when they come here and they see bars on the windows, but yes, they are necessary. I mean, especially in the colonia, or even here in the gated community, we do have bars on our windows, but that's just culturally, that's what you do now, you know? So I do feel a lot more comfortable in the gated community. I have a little boy now, and it's not just in terms of safety, but also traffic. You know, the streets are, the traffic's more monitored. There's kids playing in the street. Also, you know, there isn't any garbage laying around. I mean, it's very clean. There's gardeners maintaining everything. So in that aspect, I think they do a really, really good job in the gated communities. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is, there's much less traffic and the roads are maintained, which is nice.
Yeah, there's no potholes in Alfaro yet, knock on wood.
Yeah,
I don't have to worry about that.
yeah.
Something that I just wanted to say, Keith was talking about even the restaurants being cheaper on the colonial side. I found it interesting that the groceries even were a bit cheaper over there. Like if you went to the how do you pronounce it, Chedrari's on the port side, if you buy the same coffee on the colonial side, it was just a little bit cheaper, not a lot, probably only maybe 2, 3, 4, 5%. That surprised me. I thought, okay, well, I guess it's the same way as it is back home here in Canada. The high density areas have the more expensive groceries, it seems. The other thing too is you were talking about, do you need a car to get around, or can you walk? And you know, we got to remember, something that surprised me was how cheap the cabs were. It's essentially was, I think, 50 pesos to take a cab from the colonial side down to the beach, which is $3. And you can walk it too. I mean, it's a 45, 50-minute walk, but and the Colectivo was, I don't even know what the 30 cents, there's 30 pesos, which is really, really cheap. So there are those options as well as having a car. I would see more you need a car if you're going to have to be going into Cancun or Playa to, I guess, do banking or like go to Costco or buy furniture or whatever. But otherwise, hopefully we can get away without a vehicle. We'll see. I have a spare bit. I could drive down. I just actually looked. It's only 67 hours from where I live to get down to Puerto Morelos. I could do a road trip. See if my sister's up to it. No? Okay, she's thumbs down about the road trip.
That is a good, thank you for bringing that up, because we did kind of gloss over that. We do have great public transportation. And as COVID wears off, people, I think, will feel more comfortable getting back in, you know, in that. But that doesn't help people in the gated communities along the highway. It does help you in the colonia and in the port side for sure. But along the highway, you're really, there's no like scheduled public transportation. So you would have to get taxis, and they charge, I think, more to come to those communities, and it's kind of a hassle getting them in through security. So I don't think that's a great long-term solution. I think if you're in those, not Punta Arena, but the ones north of the Crucero on the along the highway, I think you're gonna end up wanting a car or needing a car. What else?
One more thing. The reason why I asked about the car is because right now I am still working, and even after I retire soon, hopefully, we'd probably just be like the snowbird situation, you know, because we still have young family members. And I say we, he's sitting here, he just doesn't want to be on camera.
Yeah.
That's Mike, faceless guy. Anyways, so we don't necessarily know if we'd even get or even want to go through the process of getting residency. So I know then buying a car wouldn't necessarily be an option for us, because if we're not residents, I'm assuming it's not an easy task getting a vehicle. That's why that was our one thing that's kind of holding us back. It's like, well,
Well, that's a controversial topic, because legally they say you have to have a CURP, which you can only get by having a visa to register a car. I can name off a dozen clients that I've had today who went and bought a car and registered it on a tourist visa. So they were buying from dealers. I think it would be harder with a used car. But you know, they don't, it's kind of interesting. They don't haggle here. And so there are, lower priced cars, which are great and very economic to drive. And the dealer took care of registering it. So that impediment may be not exactly real.
See, that's good to know, but I didn't hear that, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's okay. We argue about this all the time in the groups. If you follow any of the Puerto Morelos groups, you know that we love a good argument over nothing. So that's one of the things that people argue about.
Valid.
Yeah, so I lived here for a year without a car, not by choice, but it was, you could do it. But I was here, I was in the seaside village, and this is a long time ago. You could do it, and I just, bummed a ride with friends when they were going to Cancun, or got myself on a bus and got there. But I really enjoy the freedom of having my own car, going when I want to go, and not having to have other people, look at the time, Kim, stop shopping every aisle of Costco. It's kind of nice to have your own car, but there are expenses associated with that. Yeah. So I don't want to ever forget that there are even more neighborhoods. So we have Seaside Village, and the oceanfront also goes north and south of here. So there are condos and houses in those areas. The gated communities along the highway, the colonia and all those various gated communities in there. And then there's an area called Zona Urbana, which are much bigger tracts of land that people have housing on, which is nice if you need a bunch of land or want a bunch of land. And then there's what's called the Ruta de Cenotes, which is just kind of south of the Crucero. And that is an area that is on fire with development right now. I don't even know how many developments are out there. And they're developing housing communities there. And those are very nice and often have an ecological bent. So they're more environmentally conscious, or that's how they're marketing themselves to be. I haven't been actually to any of them. I will check it out, but there's hundreds of lots that you can buy there, and homes that are being built in that area, which is really not far. I mean, we feel like it's far away, but they're probably less than a 10-minute drive to the beach. Maybe it depends on how far out on the Ruta de Cenotes you go. But that's an area to keep an eye on as well. If you can be a little more remote from restaurants and shops and everything, and you want more land, it's much more affordable out there. And some really cute communities with, pools and security. And one even has a 9-hole golf course. They have some golf course homes around there. So it's interesting. Things are changing in Puerto Morelos. We're getting a lot more options, which is great. It used to be Seaside Village or Colonia, and the Colonia used to really just be Villas Uno and Villas Dos, and then it just kind of exploded with all these other things. So keep your mind open, I would say. There's a lot of different options. I did want to touch on a couple things. One is that, you may not find what you love, and so you may think, should I build a house? That's entirely possible to do. Many people are doing it, buying land and building here. There's many contractors that are English speaking that we can recommend that you work with. And it is a kind of a long process, but it is, affordable and can be done. So that's something to consider if you're not finding what you want. Some people only want like a 1-level home. Some people, want multiple stories with a roof deck. Anyway, if you can't find it, maybe you want to build it if you're in for the long haul. Another topic that comes up quite a bit is, should you rent before you think about buying property here? And I don't have a good answer for that. It's really up to you. Many people buy property without renting. They've come here on vacation maybe a few times and stayed a couple weeks at a time, and they've bought and they're perfectly happy. Other people want to come live in different neighborhoods and check them out. I don't know, Keith, did you guys rent before you long-term? No.
Not by choice. Our experience was we had rented a house in Villas Uno for 3 months, but then by the time we house hunted and we closed, and then we wound up buying a house that needed to be remodeled. So through a 5-month remodel, we were in the rental house for 10 months. And I do understand when people say, come down and rent and, sort of get a feel for the neighborhood you want. But honestly, that sound advice but honestly, I'm going to say from my perspective, I did not really begin to enjoy and appreciate Puerto Morelos until I was in my own home. My experience living here in a rental house and my experience living here in my own home was very different. So if we could have done it even faster and gotten out of the rental house quicker than we did, I would have. So it's just a different perspective on the same situation.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, did you and Carrie, you rented before you got that house?
Yep. Yeah, we're being here about 10 months now. And yeah, it was great just to see, it gave us a good perspective as far as how walkable things are. Because we had considered some of the other neighborhoods like Punta Vista and Vergara, but seeing how difficult it is to walk from there to get to like Super Key and stuff like that, that really narrowed down our search going forward. But we love like the area we're in now, but it's where we're moving to Punta Arenas is like is more central. So yeah, you can really, it makes things even more accessible from that area. But Villas Dos, Villas Uno, and Villas La Playa is like yeah, it's a great area to walk the whole city or the town around. Yeah, so it's, but yeah, no, it's been a good experience, and I'm glad we rented first, because I think we would have made a decision to move farther away, and we really wanted something that we could just walk around versus having to have a car. As cabs, collectivos and stuff are like super accessible to get around the city for sure.
Cool. All right, any questions, guys? I'm looking in the chat box. Have I missed anything that I need to? Oh, Keith answered the question. No questions?
I have one. Hi.
Yay. Hi, Gail.
Hi, this has been great. Thank you very much.
Oh,
You've answered
good.
a ton of questions and actually got me thinking about other areas, which is awesome. Because I know your area where you live, Kim, that you were talking about is pretty picked over. There just isn't a whole lot, seems to go fast anyway. So, but my question is, can I get the link for the meeting that you had a couple of weeks ago that talked about, oh, yeah, immigration, living there part-time and I missed that one. We were traveling.
Sure, it's actually on our YouTube channel, on Runaway Realty YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So super easy to grab it there, or we posted it if you're in our Facebook group, which is called Puerto Morelos Life. And if you're not, you should be. We've posted it in there as well.
Okay, perfect.
And that's a great group for all sorts of information about living in Puerto Morelos and real estate in Puerto Morelos.
Super.
You're all invited. And then our next meeting, which I don't actually have the date right in front of me, is going to be, we're going to cover the actual, like how, looking for properties and the buying process. We're going to walk you through that whole thing. And of course, answer whatever questions you have on that. And then Laura, do you remember what the next one is? After that is, oh, things to do before you move to Mexico. Things to take care of at home if you're like relocating to Mexico. I think that was, and then the next one, well, anyway, we'll publish the list, but we have some good ones coming up, including an Ask a Local session where we'll have a bunch of people who have already made the move here, who are here to answer your questions and share their experiences.
I have a question.
Thank you.
If we're not down there, we are in the lovely Green Bay, Wisconsin. So if we're not down there, we've been browsing around trying to find different places, and obviously well aware that the real estate business is very different than it is here in the States or Canada, I'm sure. So I'm like, I feel like the website that comes up most often is point to homes, point to sales, point to something or other. But we find it grossly inaccurate because it'll say a property's right on the ocean when it's out in the middle of nowhere. Do you have some way to browse through properties? I did go to your website and it's like I only saw like 2 available or something like that.
Yeah.
Is there a best method while we're not down there that we can kind of browse and even just decide what would be best for us just looking at photos? Oh, I want that little pool in the backyard. Oh, I don't need 3 levels because we're getting older and we don't want to have to climb flights of stairs, you know, that sort of thing.
So really, because we don't have an MLS and we don't have one great tool that you can trust, the best thing that we ask you to do is do a Zoom with us. Let's talk about what you're looking for and let us try to find it for you. Because I can tell you that this year, several of the homes that we sold were not on the market. We knocked on a door and found a seller. Like there's no inventory, really hardly any inventory left. It's very difficult to figure out what's real. Does this person really own it? Is this an agent? Like, it's crazy. It's the Wild West. 0.2 homes is a tool. It's not an accurate tool, but it is. I mean, we use it too. We look on there as well, but then we go the extra step and check it out and find out more about it. And we can tell by looking at it, they're showing, they never have the maps right. And they do it on purpose, which is so ridiculous. So you can just tell by the price. If it's $89,000 and it's on the beach, you know that that's not real, but you shouldn't have to do that. Let us do that crap. And we'll send you the links that are legitimate, but we've, for our listings, we've actually seen the paperwork, we've checked it out, or, we know that it's ready to sell, the title's in good shape. We can't say that for other agents, but it's the only way to do it. You cannot find properties. You can't do a real good search yourself online just because there's no central source.
And just thank you for having this. I think I mentioned earlier, we bought a condo in PA last year and now we can't even use it because we have so many people wanting to rent it out. So we're like, why the hell buy this? That just means we have to buy another, right? Oh, but we did not have this education. So as Americans, when suddenly it came time and you're wiring over money and it's X, the fees to wire over money, you got to take that into account. And then we didn't know anything about the closing costs, and to get an $18,000 add-on for closing costs was woo, so yeah. So thank you for having these. I wish.
Oh, you're welcome.
Wish you would have been there last year. So yeah.
Yeah, I know it's very difficult and there's so much conflicting information online. I mean, I myself, if I were trying to do it, I would go nuts. So that was kind of the inspiration. Like we just want to give people the information and the real information. And so you can feel confident. It's a lot of money in a foreign country when you don't speak the language, most likely, and read the language and understand the laws. So we understand the stress. And we just want to make it a little easier. We can't take away all it's still a different process that we can't really control, but we can make you feel more confident about your decision and help you make a good decision. Which is why, I don't want to ramble. I'm being what Keith said, I'm rambling, but that's why we only focus on one market, because there's no MLS. Sales information is confidential. I can't tell you what a property sold for unless I was involved in the sale, which is why I'm good in Puerto Morelos, because we've had 10 years of only working in this market. I've sold the same home multiple times. So we feel very confident that we can give you good information and you can, we have our own MLS. So we feel like we can safely advise you. I can't advise you about Playa del Carmen because I don't work in that market. And I can't tell you what it's like to live there. And I can't tell you that one neighborhood's better than the other. So these agents that do the whole Riviera Maya, I think, are doing a real disservice to their clients because they can't really help you. They're just like showing you products, but they're not giving you the whole context of, well, if you live here, then you have to consider these things if you live, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. But that's why we only do people are like, you're crazy. Why are you only doing one little market? Well, because we want to feel confident and we want to help our clients in one little market. So, and we love this little town. That's why we're here.
I think from our point of view, I mean, watching a Zoom meeting about what you should know before you buy property in Mexico is kind of like closing the door after the barn door after the horses left, because we already have bought the property, haven't taken possession of it yet. But I can't I was just saying to my husband, I can't imagine having done this without the help of Keith and Kim, because it is just so foreign, and there's so many things that just seem really peculiar to us. And so we've been really grateful for having you guys guiding us through this. And anybody that asked us, I'd say hands down, like, talk to these people if you're looking in that area, just to see what they can do to help you out. But one thing that I kind of wished we had known about was we're going to be looking at property to be essentially snowbirds coming back to Canada for the summer and being down there for the winter. And I'm wishing we had sort of known that it might have been wise to only put the property in, not in everyone's name that we're going to be the owners, but actually just have 2 of us buy the property rather than the 4 of us that are going to be buying it together to sort of split the snowbird time. Simply because the sort of organizational issues of the signing and the possession has been a little bit of a headache, and getting the fideicomiso set up. I wish what we had known, and that's in retrospect. I'm not holding you guys responsible for this, because obviously you hadn't thought of it either. You would have told us, but I wish what we had known was that perhaps just putting it in the 2 couples just in one of their names, so only one person would need to worry about signing. And I know we're going to have a little bit of a headache too when it comes to, hopefully, like 5-10 years from now, we go to sell it. We want to have a lot of years of enjoying the property. I'm wishing we had, I think it might be a bit of a headache to have all 4 of us in there, and all 4 of us having to have some kind of residency, that type of thing. It would have been easier to just know, maybe just somebody from each couple, and then the other member of the couple being the beneficiaries would have made more sense.
Yeah, I haven't had much experience with multiple people buying properties, and so that's a good point. I wonder if I don't know if it's too late to change it. It might not be.
Probably. It's probably too late, and it's something we never thought of, and it's something that, because you guys haven't done this before, you haven't thought of. It's just a weird little glitch, just sort of an FYI. If someone's looking at buying property with another couple, maybe consider doing that. Or at least,
yeah, I think what, in my typical spiel in that case is that people form a corporation outside of Mexico and be shareholders, so you don't trigger these sale events if the couples have a falling out, which I learned the hard way happened in the situation that we had. So yeah, you're right. I haven't had I didn't sell them the original property. I would have advised them not to do it that way, but they were all 4 on the title. Yeah, no, thank you. I'll keep that in mind if this comes up again, and see if we can explore some other ways to handle that. I'm not sure. Well, we can ask the attorneys.
But even for a couple, perhaps only, one of the people has their name on the property, with the other person being the beneficiary as a fideicomiso, if that other person is going to have difficulty with getting down to do the signing. Then maybe only one of you actually considers being the official name on the title.
All right, we'll check that out.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. I hope that this has been helpful. I feel like sometimes I talk really fast, so I apologize. I get nervous, but download the brainstorming guide if you want it. And I hope you join us again. We'll be doing these probably through April, at least this year. So it's always nice to see your faces. Hopefully we'll see you in Puerto Morelos.
Yeah.